introduction, I welcome Professor Rahul Sinha to present his talk. He will be talking about exploring the unknown through uncertainty principle. Professor Sinha, looking forward to your talk. Yeah,
Okay.
it is visible
Thank
now.
you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk about something that I have been passionate about at this institute for the last 20, 25 years. And I leave a quote here that you can read. Belvin Schwartz, I'm a great admirer of him. He got the 1988 Nobel Prize in Physics for the discovery of muon neutrino. In the end, if I have time, I'll tell you why I am so passionate about him. But let me see, how do I change this slide? Okay. Vani already showed the scales that are relevant to physics, and it's all physics right from 10 to the minus 17 to 10 to the 24. So I'll skip that. Now, we all know that matter is made up of atoms, and Rutherford, with his gold foil experiment, showed that the atom has a peculiar structure with the nucleus is positively charged, occupying a very small volume in the center and electrons going around it. The nucleus itself was realized to be made up of neutrons and protons. And in the late 60s, identical experiments were, Rutherford-based experiments were done with the electron bombarded on a proton, and it was found that even the proton has structure inside it. And we interpret these in terms of partons or quarks, and the size of the nucleus is 10 to minus 15, and the electron is definitely less than 10 to minus 16, now 10 to minus 17. These slides are old. And the quark also has a similar size of 10 to minus 17. Now, some of the discoveries that were very relevant to particle physics was special relativity, quantum mechanics, and soon a host of, once these two theoretical inputs were there, with the experiments, we had a lot of development in the area. The neutrino was conjectured simply from energy momentum conservation. And Dirac showed, as a consequence of relativity and quantum mechanics, that the electron must have a partner called the antiparticle, which differs, has identical properties, except it has opposite quantum numbers like charge. The real problem started in 1936 when the muon was discovered, and in 1947, after the war, the pion were discovered. So the muon discovery, in fact, was initially thought to be the particle predicted by Yukawa to explain strong forces in the nucleus. This was already predicted because we knew that the nucleus is so tightly bound, and it contains positive protons, so they should repel each other, and therefore there must be a force. So he even predicted the mass of the particle. Trouble started when it was realized that the muon interacted with matter very weakly, whereas Yukawa's meson, with its transfer of strong forces that bind the nucleus together, should have dramatic interactions. It was eventually recognized that the muon is a heavy version of the electron, having identical properties, but with no role at all in nuclear interactions. It seemed so surprising at that time that there was a particle that was not needed for the atomic structure that Rabi is famously known to equip. Who ordered that? In fact, the existence of the muon is a puzzle that still exists with us, and the picture looks far more complicated today. In fact, what happens is that particle physics, after the war, large number of discoveries took place. We had particles called K in 1950s, which we realized were different from what was there. So already we were finding particles that had no relevance to the atomic structure, and our world could have existed without the muon as well as the strange particles, the Ks. They were called strange because of certain decay properties and production properties. Now, in 1964, we had enough discoveries that we could theoretically predict that even before the partons were seen in the SLAC experiment, where the Rutherford-like SLAC experiment, we could predict that all the particles that are being seen are made up of more fundamental particle called quarks, and that U and D quarks that that comprise the proton and neutron form a family, and so did the electron and the neutrino, which was required for electron. Although it was not seen, it was realized that energy moment conservation you must have. So there was forming a family. The muon and the muon neutrino that I talked about, Melvin Schwartz having discovered, seem to have no purpose. They were just a replication of this other family. The strange particle was sitting alone, and then a host of discoveries happened in the starting with the CHARMM, and soon we realized that there was a 3-generation standard model that describes the world of elementary particles. The world of elementary particles is of course complicated enough that there are 3 generations: the electron and its neutrino, and then there is a heavier particle called a muon and its neutrino, and then a tau, which is even heavier. So here I have shown the charges and the masses below, and these are the leptons. And then there are also 3 families of quarks: the U and D, and the heavier ones with charges are C and S, and then T and B. The top quark is in fact so heavy that it's a 175 GeV, so you should think of it more like a heavy nucleus. But they are all elementary as far as we understand them today. These particles interact with 3 kinds of interactions. Gravity is irrelevant for these particles, for these quarks and leptons. The electromagnetic weak and strong interactions, and they are mediated by gauge bosons, the photon which carries the electromagnetic interactions, the weak interactions which are carried by massive bosons, the W and the Z, and the gluons, which are responsible eventually for the strong interactions. And I'll discuss a little bit more about this. And the important thing is that all these quarks and leptons and everything exists, and there's also antimatter states. For every particle, there exists an antiparticle. Some particles, like the Z, are its own antiparticle, photon. Okay, so the world is very simple if one sees right now, but the point I said was that that there are quarks, and you observe states like the delta plus plus, which are identical quarks with identical spin 3/2 in the net, and therefore you realize that Fermi-Dirac statistics would require you to give an additional quantum number, and we realize that there are colors for it. This color eventually turned out to be responsible for a gauge interaction mediated by gluons. So there is the 3 colors: the red, green, and blue, and 3 anticolors. And the quarks constitute the proton and the antiproton, and they are bound together by a bunch of gluons that are being exchanged continuously between this. So here is an animation that I have shown on the right panel. All the particles that are observed are color neutral. You will always see that in the net thing over time they are color neutral, and all hadrons except the protons are unstable. Once produced, they decay into particles of smaller masses. So we only postulate that proton doesn't decay because of baryon number conservation. It's the lightest baryon that we know of. Okay, yeah. Now, the weak interactions that I also mentioned being mediated by W and Z, I'll have very little talk about the Z in today's talk. But what was seen was a muon would decay to an electron via the weak interaction, and the pion would decay to a mu nu, or this was the beta decay that was observed in the nucleus, where they seem to have different strengths. But if you believed in a universal weak interaction, you should assume that essentially the interaction is the same strength, and this universality could be simply tackled. And Cabibbo showed that following Gell-Mann, that it is possible to understand the universality if we assume weak transitions take place in the same generation, but that the weak eigenstates are not the same as the mass eigenstates. That is, the D that takes place in the takes part in the weak interaction and the S that takes part in the weak interaction are rotated states, rotated by an angle theta c. And with this, and the 3 generation three generations anticipated Kobayashi and Maskawa generalized this and showed that, a unitary matrix, in fact, by incorporating phases, and I have shown here, I don't know whether you can see my mouse, you can in fact incorporate CP violation.
The
And
mouse is
this,
visible.
good, thanks. So it was also observed by Wolfenstein. There's a very interesting structure of this matrix, the unitary matrix, that the transitions between the U and the D quark, if they are order 1, the transition from the U to S quark are order lambda, and transition C to D and so forth. And the weakest transitions take place from B to U and T to D. And in fact, the matrix is a little bit more complicated. If you expand in the Wolfenstein angle, the Cabibbo angle, in the Wolfenstein parameterization to lambda 4, this is a very good approximation. And at the moment, we have not discovered anything that breaks this up to this order. No correction terms have been confirmed. But anyway, we expect that there'll be correction at higher orders. The parameters are given here. And this transition, or the existence of generation and the decay to lighter particles, is what is very critical for what we do. Okay. Now, in the public domain, there is a lot of discussion about particle physics and how simple it is. But we particle physicists are not interested in just preparing standard dishes with quarks and leptons and these interactions. We want to discover a new dish. We want to have a step towards going beyond the standard model. That's what interests us. And in fact, the machine that was built since I was a graduate student was the LHC. And it has operated for the last 12 years, heavily delayed by several years. And, it is a ring, a 27-kilometer ring that you can see. I don't know whether you can see the red ring here. It is just depicting the underground tunnel, which is 100 meters deep, and huge experiments that are designed to discover the new dish or physics beyond the standard model. Okay. There are different experiments. I'm sorry that I haven't included Atlas there, simply that I'm not going to discuss the physics with Atlas in my talk. Okay, but Atlas is shown in these things, and there's a huge effort with at least 8 to 10,000 full-time particle physicists, a huge number of engineers, thousands of engineers and technicians who are manning this, and it's a technological feat. In fact, since no new dish has appeared at LHC, in the absence of new physics discovery, we must either build bigger accelerators or find other ways to discover new physics beyond the standard model. Already we have stretched the limit of our technology to build LHC. New accelerators will depend on new technology, especially if you want to achieve higher energy. And so you will have to develop new technology. This will take many tens of years to build. Okay, unless you are building a standard kind of machine. Even standard kind of machine take almost 10 years to build. So if you want to build something new, it's well beyond my lifetime, probably lifetime of students. So the discovery of new physics may take a lifetime. Homogeneity, of course, can't be doubted, and one can be sure that we will discover new physics someday, as we know that there are many ills that plague the standard model. People have, of course, even before the LHC got commissioned, people started thinking of the various possibilities of confirming or probing beyond the standard model. And with the LHC, there is a projection for a linear collider to be built, which would be a machine. We still don't know where it will be built. But this has been a proposal since early 90s. Okay, we still haven't got an approved thing. The KEGB approval happened in 2008, and this is a slide from a talk by the Director General when I was joining the Bell experiment. So the proposal for the KIC factory has appeared. So this is flavor physics. There is efforts in lepton physics, which actually have come in past. But for new particles and interactions, where you have to go to high energy frontiers, it takes time. So the US Department of Energy, the High Energy Physics Advisory Panel, has said that we have to probe all three frontiers together: the energy frontier, the intensity frontier, and the cosmic frontier. Unfortunately, US doesn't have its own high intensity machine except in Neutrino. Now this Stanford machine shut down, and there are only efforts in CERN and in Japan. Okay, now let me talk about the magic with weak decays and get to where I want to take you. The K meson, which I told you, these strange particles that were discovered in the early 50s, they decay by a weak interaction. And the weak interaction, of course, the charged interactions propagate by W, and the Z propagate neutral interactions. Now, the charge interactions happens so that S goes to a lighter quark, the U bar, the D, so that the K is decaying to two pion states. It goes to a U here. Okay, so they go diagonally because the charge W is exchanged, so you change charge there. Okay, now both K0 and K0 bar, if you see, can produce a pi plus pi minus. And you can see in this, the reverse process, I have produced the same state pi plus pi minus as a K0 bar can do. So in fact, what I can do is if I turn it around, I can take a K0 bar to a K0. That is, I can take matter to antimatter. That is, I can have an oscillation between matter and antimatter because there is nothing stopping me from going back from K to K0 bar because K0 would decay. And again, I can do that. So these oscillations are incredibly interesting and occur in neutral mesons K, D0, and B0. Okay. And of course, the BS. So B has two kinds of flavors there. I won't distinguish between them in this talk. Now, if I look at it, the UU bar here in this is really going continuously. So I could have got just this quark here. And I have shown this example of the B meson, which is more interesting because new physics is probably going to contribute to a larger extent. I'll explain because CK angle, the B to T transitions are bigger, as I showed in the transition, than the B to U transitions. So in this, I find smaller transitions. This is going to be a bigger effect. Now, even though there is not enough energy to produce W plus W minus, real W plus W minus, that can be seen, uncertainty principle allows heavy particles to be produced for a very short time. In such an oscillation process, therefore, new physics or new particles with the correct quantum numbers can also contribute. So even though in standard model I have these W plus W minus that are going around, I will have contributions from new physics in this process. In fact, this is a very rare process in the standard model because this loop, because this constitutes no direct production, it goes through vertical particles. This is non-zero only because of unequal masses of UCT. Okay, if the masses were equal, the unitarity of these elements would actually set it zero. So of course, the question is that here is a nice place to look for new physics, but it's not easy to calculate this process. And there are QCT corrections, that is corrections because we are talking of mesons which are bound by strong forces. There are corrections and we really don't have a very good estimate, and only huge lattice calculations are required. As of now, we really don't know, have enough sensitivity to discover new physics here. So the question is, how can we discover new physics? New physics, of course, cannot show up everywhere. Where should one look for new physics? The obvious rules to look for observables that are easy to measure, so that they are no longer systematic or backgrounds to deal with. Have a small new physics theory uncertainty. Of course, everything has to be calculated. Then only you can compare with the experiment. Okay, and that calculation should not have a huge uncertainty because you cannot do non-perturbative aspects of QCD. The sensitivity of new physics should be large. It should be sensitive, so that new physics signals are seen with the least number of B mesons, and the loop processes are easy to calculate. So that's what we want to look for, and we should smartly be able to remove standard model uncertain. And here is a quote from a paper which refers to our first work. Says much more versatile in this respect is the decay B2SLL, with the possibility to measure, for instance, differential decay rate in the lepton invariant mass. Okay, one can measure. So the invariant mass is the L plus L minus invariant mass that one is talking about. One can construct asymmetries, and a full angular analysis of these would give a multitude of observables. And this is our reference. The downside of such a measurement is low statistics that has just started to be overcome. Okay. Now, many people. So what we did was in '96, I wrote the first paper, but for various reasons, even though there's an excellent report from PRL and there was no problem with the paper, I never wrote it up. Sehgal, who was a professor at Aachen, was visiting me and said, "What happened to the paper?" I said, "Well, I haven't replied back to the referee." And he said that, "Well, I've asked my student Frank Kruger to look at it, and you don't give up such papers. So why don't we write a paper together?" So we wrote it up, and this became history. So what we showed was just like Rutherford experiment, where you saw the alpha particle going around at all directions. Here, of course, there are multiple particles decaying, the K, pi, E, and we look at where these particles go. And if you look at that, you will be able to figure out if there's anything unusual happening in the decay. And so the B sits here at rest in this frame of reference that we have chosen to the calculation. And we have the L plus L minus system going opposite to the K star, and the K star decays in its own rest frame to K pi and E plus E minus. Now, the point was that we realized that in any machine that the L plus L minus, which could be the muons, are very easy to detect and trigger on. So you could produce a huge number of these particles, and you could, in principle, in this environment, you could easily reconstruct everything. And this could be studied very, very well. But this was way too early. What we did in '96 and '99 was way too early for people to accept. They said, well, it'll be very difficult, it's not worth it. Anyway, today's situation has changed. Why did we bother with B to K star LL and K star decaying to K pi? Because it's a penguin process, which is a rare flavor changing neutral current. That is, it is this kind of loop that appears in the box, but it's a single loop. Okay, and it is very, very small within the standard model, because if U, C, and T are all of the same mass, then unitarity would ensure that it is zero. But we know that they have unequal masses, and therefore there is a small effect. Okay, this small effect is essential because new physics will interfere with that. Okay, so we have a very large number of observables. As I showed in the previous slide, I have this huge angular distribution which carries at least 9 terms. And if there is new physics, there'll be even more terms. So you can measure them as a function of the invariant mass of the leptons. So this is the Q squared. So of the L plus L minus invariant momentum. So you have huge number of observables that can be done. It's a clean mode because if you've studied in a manner where there is almost none or reduced hadronic uncertainty. Actually, it's almost none is a correct word. So this was done in late in 2010 with my students Das and Mandal, and even Avinash Khare and Avinash Nayak and Anirban Karam, where we used this and showed existence of new physics. So the point, as I said, was there are all these 9 angular observables, so you can have several asymmetries that can be measured, which are sensitive to new physics by interference as linear effects. Now, what is this decay really? This decay is a B to D, a B to NS quark, B bar to NS bar quark, which goes via this loop, which is W boson mediated. But there are, of course, more complicated diagrams that I have not mentioned here. And in fact, all these diagrams put together can be cast into this pink box here, which is an effective interaction because there are Cushing corrections which come here, and all kinds of corrections have to be taken. And even after taking all these corrections, people realized in late 90s after our paper that there are more corrections which cannot be accounted for easily. And these were because the charm loop could not be integrated, because once you do the heavy W and write an effective Lagrangian to do this, you get a point interaction here. The charm loop comes out, so you have non-local interactions. And so the trouble for us was that we really wanted it to be used to discover new physics without much calculation. Then you really needed to come up with a clean formalism. And that's what we achieved. What we did was we developed the most general parameterization of the decay amplitude, making without making any assumptions except Lorentz invariance and gauge invariance, which have no doubt about their correctness. So what we showed, I don't want you to get into this, but we showed that there's a particular form which can be done. And we showed that all hadronic parameters can be solved in terms of only one parameter. So all these parameters that we have here, the G's, current G's, and these C9s and T, everything can be solved. Okay, except one parameter, one of the parameters that's left. And one only needs a reliable estimate of that parameter. It turns out that the imaginary parts that we have separated here are tiny. And if they are tiny, there's almost negligible dependence on this single parameter. So you have exact calculations, so you can find exact relations between these observables that can be verified experimentally. Any violation of these relations will be a signal of new physics. Okay. Now, what is the experimental status of this? The measurements of angular observables is the most important measurement currently being made, as is evident from the agendas of most international meetings. So you go anywhere, these angular observables, our calculator stolen people have chosen, they written the i's in terms of j's, and a lot of, but it's all what we started earlier. They started deriving ratios of these observables and things, gave a different name, but eventually it's the same angular observables. Experiment measured all 9 angular distributions and those for the antiparticles in 8, and in a separate analysis in 14 bin distributions in Q squared. Okay, so you have 9 angular observables, and that for the antiparticle is also done. So 18 into 14 measurements done for the single mode. Okay, and much more data is awaited. There are several hints of new physics because you have so many observables. You have several evidences of new physics at 3 or 4 sigma. Okay. What we did recently was we showed that already this mode is showing a strong evidence for right-handed interactions. When I told you about the weak interactions, the weak interaction W's are supposed to be left-handed. The neutrinos are only known to be left-handed. Interactions are mediated by a 1 minus gamma 5 kind of interaction, and that is what Sudarshan and Marshak showed, that W are left-handed. Weak interaction is left-handed. What we do, which we sort of generalize, I don't want you to bother with it, but we came up with observables that are going to be different if the existence of right-handed currents exists. And when we did the fits, we found that yes, there is a 1 sigma, 3 sigma, and 5 sigma. This is without making any assumption of theory. There is at least a 3 sigma evidence already. Now, let me conclude by saying this mode will probe for physics well beyond the reach of LHC, and is and will continue to be one of the most sought after decay modes in precision tests of heavy flavor. We are on the verge of reliable signal of new physics, which will emerge at probably Bell, LHC and Bell 2 experiments if they confirm the angular distribution. The question will be, how can one tell the scale and nature of new physics? Okay, how much time do I have?
I think you have more or less exhausted. So
exhausted.
Maybe.
Yeah, let me just say something about Melvin Schwartz that I said. Now, I'm very admirer of Melvin Schwartz, not just for his physics discoveries and his, but the fact was that he realized he's such a great intellectual, realized the emergence of the big technologies that were emerging, and he gave Steve Jobs $25,000 when he came up. You remember, I don't know, many of you must know that the computer club that was run in the Stanford auditorium. And he went and told Melvin Schwartz that he had this idea to build a thing. Melvin Schwartz gave him $25,000 without any guarantees. Okay, he knew what it meant. Unfortunately, he didn't know how to make money. So he never, when Steve Jobs said that, okay, now you can choose between stocks or your money, he said, give my money back. So anyway, a great admirer of him. And that's it. Now let me go for questions.
Thank you very much, Professor Sinha, for this wonderful talk. I already have Professor Bhaskaran raised his hand. Professor Bhaskaran,
Yes.
please go ahead. Go ahead and ask your question.
Rahul, very
Yeah.
nice talk. I
Thank
have
you.
a very general question, which is also related to the last sentence that you have in your slide. How can one tell the scale and nature of
Yes.
physics? Now,
Yes.
this entire standard model edifice and beyond
Yes.
is resting on the belief that quantum mechanics is at work
Yes.
in all scales.
Yes.
Now, are there bounds or are there any efforts to see small
all-
violations of quantum mechanics?
Yeah, no,
Can you
I
go
mean,
to
that
this?
is, there is no evidence yet of it happening, in the sense that, there may be various inequalities that may hold, but quantum mechanics stays as is at the moment. We haven't found any evidence. Okay, if we find something that is wrong in one of these experiments and then simply cannot explain it with any minor corrections, but modifications of fundamental laws would correct it, then yes, we would have to think about it. But at the moment, unfortunately, we haven't found any evidence that quantum mechanics is wrong, and we are just beginning to see on the verge of reliable signals of new physics. Probably, we still have to await experiments to confirm everything. But I can't at this moment tell whether quantum mechanics. So all our calculations assume quantum mechanics, assume quantum field theory. Relativity and everything is assumed. If
I'm asking this question because history tells that
yeah,
all the theories evolve.
yes,
We came
I,
from
I
Newton
agree.
first.
I agree. In fact, this is one of my favorite things, to believe that at some scale these things will break down, and that is why we are at crossroads. We may be finding some place where this is already happening. We may be on the verge of, could be. It's just too early to tell. But I would think that young physicists, I would count myself in them, and you also, should keep our minds open about such possibilities, because I think one can still contribute to ideas. There is no bound in physics. Melvin came back to becoming director deputy director of Brookhaven after forming a company which was very visionary. He wanted semiconductor chips of memory to be built in 1970s. Nobody was willing to fund it. So yes, we can always do physics, and yeah, there can always be. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sayantan, please go ahead and ask your question.
Thanks, Rahul, for this wonderful talk. I just wanted to ask you that how many years of experimental running do you anticipate to get some conclusive evidence of new
Well,
physics?
unfortunately, they haven't even analyzed the data beyond the run-to data. 3 years of data has not even been analyzed. The stakes are so high. It's a discovery of new physics, and discovery of new physics which might not be palatable to many models that have been proposed, like supersymmetry. I'm not saying that supersymmetry will be ruled out by this mode, but I'm just saying that people feel that it is not palatable, and so they are being extremely cautious. They haven't analyzed any data beyond 2012 yet. Okay, except in the charge mode, where all the data is done, apparently run to data, but they have at least 15 more years of running time. So, people are extremely
Okay, so
cautious in this mode. Extremely cautious, because you can't fudge the effects being seen. It's a very clean mode. There are, in general, very little theoretical assumptions. Of course, people use different kinds of approaches to probe this mode, so they theoretically estimate things in different fashion from what we believe is the best. But there were other modes, other approaches were developed in Europe, and clearly they have people are beginning to realize that ours is the cleanest approach, and eventually that will have to be done. So they haven't yet analyzed anything beyond 2012. I don't know why. Every time I ask them, they say, "Well, these are difficult things to do." How difficult? I have refereed papers, experimental papers on this from Bell. One has to be cautious in all experiments, but they have taken too long. And but they will run for many more years. Bell 2 will produce the same amount of data, and clearly they would follow approach that would be the most appropriate to discovering new physics. Because I have internal hand in that.
Questions?
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, if there are no more questions, then let's thank Professor Sinha again for this wonderful talk. Thank you all for participating.